Hello, quilters. Justin here. First, I want to say thank you for last night. It was great to Zoom with you and get started on our new quilt, Log Cabin Fever. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Justin Sews and Stuff, to receive notifications when I upload new tutorials for this project and other stuff. Today, I'm going to make a quick video to introduce the pattern and show how to begin cutting for this project. Our pattern is something between a log cabin and a grandmother's flower garden. I was inspired to design this pattern by Karen Murphy's Grandmother's Flower Garden pattern in her book, Log Cabin Quilts, A Brand New Story. Here's a picture of her finished quilt. As you can see here, Karen Murphy's quilt was designed for paper piecing, but I wanted a patchwork version. Also, I just wanted a reason to use my hexagon ruler. So I did the math, which has to do with the square root of 3. I added seam allowances and I came up with 36 possible variations. I decided that I wanted all of my blocks to finish at the same size, so I colored out a few blocks of a hexagon grid, and I determined how many blocks I would want in a king-sized version of this quilt. That's how I came up with a finished block size 8 1/4 inches by 9 1/2 inches, which can fill out a quilt top to nicely match 3 yards of 108-inch backing. But this is just a little version that will finish at 59 inches by 59 inches. Great for a baby blanket or a lap quilt. Throughout this project, we will be working on the following 8 skills. Sewing a 1/4 inch seam allowance, which is why I recommend using a 1/4 inch piecing foot. Measuring accurately to 1/8 of an inch. Straightening edges, making sure that your ruler is lined up both parallel and perpendicular to the selvage. Setting seams and pressing, because your iron and ironing board are necessary tools in quilting. Easing in seams, which sounds tricky, but merely means that you're going to make a longer seam line fit with a shorter one without puckering. Piecing long, narrow strips. Measuring a 60-degree angle. And setting in seams, or Y seams, which is as simple as sewing in a straight line from point A to point B. For this project, you're only going to need a few tools, most of which you probably already have. You'll need a 6-inch by 24-inch ruler, a cutting mat, and a rotary cutter. You'll need an iron and an ironing board, and a sewing machine. Also, it could help to have a hexagon ruler and a 1/4 inch piecing foot. But those are optional, and I'll show you how to make do without them. Now, let's take a look at the pattern and our list of materials. You will need 19 coordinated prints for the blocks and the outer border. If you're going to repeat prints, you can get away with less fabric. However, I'm going to use a different 1/4 yard of fabric, or fat quarter, for each of my hexagon hearts. You will also need 2 yards of fabric for the inner border. I would recommend that you use a solid or something that reads as a solid, like Fairy Frost from Michael Miller. It comes in a rainbow of colors, and it's a great alternative to a solid Kona. I'm going to use 4 yards of Kona for my backing. You'll need 2/3 of a yard of fabric for your binding, or you'll need bias tape. And you'll need a 65-inch by 65-inch piece of batting. Okay, let's head to the ironing board to press 3 fat quarters. If you're working with yardage, take a 1/4 yard of each of 3 fabrics and press. Of course, try not to iron back and forth because ironing distorts the fabric. Just press. Also, I like to use Mary Ellen's Best Press because it gives the fabric a crisp finish, which is nice for cutting and sewing. freshly pressed, it's time to cut your fabric. If you're using yardage, go ahead and cut it in half parallel to the selvage so that you've got two pieces that are approximately 9 inches by 21 inches, or 2 fat eighths. If you're using a fat quarter, do not cut it in half. Or if you already did, that's fine too, just not necessary. If you look through the pattern, you'll notice that there are 36 possible variations for cutting this block. I'm going to use variation 8 on page 4 in my basic cutting example. If you're a beginner, or if you just want a simple and fast project, you can use only one variation. Then you can stack and whack. On the other hand, you can mix things up and use 19 different variations, or make a bigger quilt and use all 36. And if you need help planning your quilt, feel free to ask in the comments below. You'll see that variation 8 begins by asking for hearth B. And if you take a look at page 3, you'll see that hearth B has a short diagonal of 3.5 inches and a long diagonal of 4 inches. So, from selvage to selvage, cut a strip the width of your short diagonal. In this case, 3.5 inches. So, from selvage to selvage, cut a strip the width of your short diagonal, in this case, 3.5 inches. So we're going to make sure that our ruler down here is parallel to the selvage, and that our ruler along this side is perpendicular to the selvage. This is going to give us our straightest edge. So, from one end of that strip, cut a rectangle to 4 inches. Again, make sure your ruler is lined up perpendicular and parallel to the selvage. Now you have a rectangle. A hexagon ruler makes it easy to trim the angles from your rectangle. And there you have it. Now, simply fold your rectangle in half lengthwise and place the 60-degree line on your ruler on the fold, with the point at the 60-degree line meeting the tip of the fold, and trim. Flip and trim the other side. Again, lay the 60-degree line against the fold, put the point of the 60-degree line at the tip, and just give it a quick trim. That's all you need to do to make a perfect hexagon. Now, if you're making all of your blocks the same exact sizes, go ahead and stack up your freshly pressed fabric. Make sure everything's nice and neat and squared up. And you can go ahead and add several layers, however many you feel that you can get away with. Then we're going to go ahead and take our ruler and measure off 3.5 inches. Okay. So from selvage to selvage, cut a strip the width of your short diagonal, in this case, 3.5 inches. If you don't have a ruler with a 60-degree angle mark on it, simply Google hexagon, click on images, and print one. Then lay the long side of your favorite ruler point to point along the long diagonal of the image and mark the 60-degree angle with a piece of painter's tape. I like to tear my painter's tape in half so there's only one straight edge and a jagged edge so that I know which edge, the straight edge, to measure with when I'm cutting. Once you've cut out the hearth piece, the remainder of the 1/4 yard of fabric is going to be cut into strips from selvage to selvage to form the logs and the outer border of the quilt. So, from the 3.5-inch strip that you've already cut, go ahead and cut 2 1.5-inch strips, which is the width of pieces 2 through 7 in variation 8. Make sure that your ruler is parallel with the selvage down here and perpendicular to the selvage on this side. From your 1.5-inch strips, cut piece 2 at 2.5 inches. Again, you're going to make sure that you're lining up parallel to the selvage and perpendicular to the selvage. Can't stress this enough. Now, there's piece 2. You're going to cut pieces 3, 4, 5, and 6, which are 3 3/4 inches each. One, two, three, and 4. And finally, you're going to cut piece number 7 at 4 7/8 inches. Next, cut 2 1 7/8 inch strips from another piece of the fabric. And you're going to subcut these for pieces 8 through 13. Piece 8 is going to be cut to 3 5/8 inches. Pieces 9, 10, 11, and 12 are always going to be 5 1/4 inches. Not sure why that is, but the math always works out. Number 1, 2, 3, And here we've got piece 12 at 5¼ inches. Finally, we're going to cut piece number 13, which is going to be 6 7/8 inches. What you're going to want to do is reserve the remainder of your 1/4 yard of fabric to use in the strippy border. Now you're going to want to go ahead and stack up your block. Put all 13 pieces in order from 1 to 13, or 13 to 1, however you want to look at it. And there you have it, one pile of your 19s. You're going to go ahead and do this for 18 others, and as you do, you're going to reserve the remainder of your 1/4 yard of fabric, this fat eighth, to use in the strippy border. I like to neatly fold mine with any scraps that I might have tucked inside the folds. There you have it. Next time, we will sew our blocks. See you then.